Well, all good things must come to an end, and sadly, this is our last Thursday in FeBREWary of 2021. And I've got to be honest, going into it, I was a little bit, well, I was leery because everything's been changed because of pandemic. And when we said we'll do virtual hangs out of it, I was like, is that going to be a thing? It turns out we actually had a good time and we've enjoyed ourselves. And I know that it will continue for our last Thursday, and it'll feature Powers Farm and Brewery. And we've got Kevin, one of the owners, with us hanging virtually. And I will tell you, Kevin, first, welcome to Thursday on DC101.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
I just washed my wife's car and got all the snow and the ice and the salt off of it. I could really use a beer right now. And so I'm going to say, without any further pomp or circumstance, I'm opening our first beer, if you don't mind. Unless, of course, you do mind, in which case I won't open it.
No objection. Let's dive in. I like it.
Okay. All right, so I've got the, let's see. I've got the lemongrass pills. I figure that's a nice one to start with, being the other one looks like a little bit of a heavy hitter, which we'll get to later. So I made the right choice, correct?
Yeah, I like this order. This is a good post-chore beer for sure.
Hey, here we go. I am pouring. And I just dumped all over my keyboard because I don't know how to pour beer because I'm not a professional like yourself, Kevin. Okay.
You've been doing this all month. You should have had it down by now.
All right. So I've got the lemongrass pills, and it's a very sad amount of lemongrass pills, but cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
I'm going to tell you, Kevin, and for anybody who's watching this or listening to this, I am a crispy boy. And what a crispy boy is a guy who loves his crushable, sessionable, Pilsner, Kolsch's type beer. So this is right up my alley. And when it came, as this is what one of the ones we're going to sample, I was like, yes, Powers Farm, already one of my favorites. So why was this one of the ones you wanted to get into my hands, Kevin?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on a lot of that stuff. So this is one of the first beers we ever made, actually, and it's one of the only ones we keep on tap all the time. We brew as seasonally as we can with stuff we grow here. But it's just like what you said. It's a great place to start. It's a nice, clean, it's an unfiltered Pilsner that we let kind of warm age and then cold condition. We brew it with lemongrass that we grow on the farm. So in the summer, we use fresh lemongrass. In the winter, we use dried lemongrass. So we're able to brew it all year. The lemongrass adds like a little bitterness that Pilsners really benefit from. And then, just as the beer ages, it's got a nice kind of, that nice balance between clean and bitter. It finishes nice, I think.
It finishes real nice. It's, as I said, I just got finished washing a car in 45-degree weather. So this is really nice. It's refreshing. It's quenching my thirst. And it's the best thing I can say about Pilsners and Kolsch's and light beers in general is it makes me want to go back and get another sip as quickly as possible. There's no greater compliment that you can give than that. And I want to get back into another sip of it right now.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, this is a go-to shift beer for us too. So, and like I said, it's a good one just to have on all the time.
Agreed. So let's talk about Powers Farm. I was going to ask the question, how much of your ingredients do you grow on your farm? And before I could even ask, you were already in with we grow the lemongrass that's in the lemongrass pills. So what was your thought process in starting your own brewery? And was the farm aspect from the beginning, kind of towards the beginning, or kind of halfway through, you're like, we should just get a farm and grow our own stuff?
Yeah, there's a lot of different types of farm breweries. So for us, it really, the farm is the root of what we do. So the farm existed for several years before the brewery. We grow 2.5 acres of fruits and vegetables. We sell them all. We used to sell them at farmers markets. Now we sell them all through the CSA, which a lot of people are familiar with, but for those who aren't, it's just a subscription program. So there's about 75 families that come pick up, during the summer, fruits and vegetables all week. So, that was the base of what we did, and we were kind of brewing on the side. we moved to a little bigger farm. We were in one part of Fauquier County. We moved to a little bigger farm where we could expand and have a tap room on site and that kind of thing. So we brew on a 2.5 barrel hot side system, which is really small, which is actually great for kind of this farm brew combo, because it allows us to do some stuff that you would not want to do at 10 barrels or 15 barrels. It gets very tedious when you're cutting and roasting squash that you grew on the farm, which we'll get into with the stout. So yeah, just about all of our beers, are intended to be, to use a little hyperbole, like intended just to be expressions of stuff that we're growing, flavors that we have that we can kind of integrate with classic styles of beer. So we don't do anything super weird. We try to keep it, pretty boxed in, and, draw on some traditional uses for things. We grow yarrow, which was a traditional bittering herb. That's kind of a fun one to brew with. So, we do a lot of that stuff. And Roche, I'm with you. I like kind of this lighter, more sessionable beer. So I would say we're pretty low on the kind of a lighter ABV brewery.
I want to, and this is not going to derail our conversation, but you brought up CSAs. I'm a huge proponent of CSAs. I'm not sure if you continue as a CSA farm or if you pivoted straight to the brewery, but I wanted you to kind of expand on what the CSA concept is all about, because it's really an excellent way for you to support your local farms and also get really fresh fruits and or vegetables. And in the case of me, the way that what I do is meats as well. I love the concept. So if you could just kind of, for people who may not know what a CSA is, and as Kevin is explaining it, think to yourself, you're probably not far from from a farm, wherever you live in the DMV, and you could support a farm as well through a CSA, as you're hearing Kevin go through what a CSA is all about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's the base of what we do. So to answer your question, we absolutely continue to grow the fruits and vegetables, and the CSA has actually grown. So it's all picked up here and we do it. But yeah, to back up and answer your question. So CSA, community supported agriculture, really started as this concept of consumers, giving farmers money up front and then sharing in the harvest. So sharing in the risk, sharing in the rewards, having like a direct contact to their farmer so they can ask questions about how things are grown. They can have inputs on all these things. I mean, I think food, the more you learn about how it's made and how it's grown and the challenges and benefits of it, really enriches it. So I'm with you. I think the closer you can get to being direct, the better. So, for us, the way it works is we have different sizes. So, sometimes it can be a little bit of a commitment up front, but there's all kinds, the model is, you were exactly right. There are tons of farms like ours that grow in sustainable ways, that often results in more nutritious and, frankly, like, I think, better tasting food, which is the primary reason, right? And I think the other stuff is great, but I think, that it's all about the quality of the product. So yeah, I think if you're anywhere, in the DMV, there are tons of farms all over, in Maryland, out here in Virginia, north of us, south of us. And they've really, I would encourage you to just start looking around, because there's a lot of, COVID has really created an environment where a lot of farmers like us are trying to get to maybe underserved places. So like you said, it's not even going to be much of a convenience issue. You're not going to be driving an hour, if you live in DuPont, out to Fauquier County to pick up your food. There's a lot of really great ways to get it. So yeah, for us, we grow 30 or 40 different fruits and vegetables. We have 50 laying hens that we actually feed our spent, grain to from the brewing process, and then they also help us maintain the farm. So yeah, there's eggs, there's meats, like you said. There's some great farms out here that do, direct, locally raised. I don't know who you use specifically, but it's a great program. You can really learn more about the food too, which is a huge benefit.
Right. Now, I'll use one last point on the CSA to get back into our conversation about beer. The other thing that I love about a CSA, whether it's meat, whether it's vegetables, whether it's fruit, whether it's just the basket, is you get what the land gives you. So you may think to yourself, well, I'm only signing up because I only want, for us, it was like, oh, we'll get all the steaks. But then you start getting different cuts of meat because that's what's available. And you're like, the first thing you do is say, well, I've never had that cut of meat before, so I'm not going to eat that. And then you go, wait a second, I paid for it. It's what the land gave me. I better come up with some recipes. And next thing you know, you're trying some different vegetables that you would never try before. You're trying different meats that you wouldn't try before. And the mystery box aspect of it is a little daunting at first, but then it gets to the point where you're kind of excited to see what you can do with different things. Now, I'm going to move it back to beer because looking over your beer list, you're kind of in that situation as well, I would assume. So is it kind of the same mentality that I just described as far as, okay, well, what what did the land provide? Now what kind of beer can I make with the ingredients that the land has provided for me?
You totally get it. That's exactly spot on. And I think, this is the time of year too when we're lightest on available harvestable crops, right? And we've learned that we're getting into our fourth year, and the first winter was kind of a oh shoot moment, and we've learned to really think about what can be, what herbs can be dried, and let's do that so that we have something in February or March.
Right.
You really have to. It was a hard lesson to learn. Seemed obvious at the time, but so yeah, I mean that's a huge part of it, and I mean I think that's why we don't really focus on any styles or any specific lanes, because when you have blackberries or yarrow or honeysuckle, we try to find a style that really matches that. So what about the yeast? What about the grain bill is going to help make that work? I mean, I think we don't do a ton of IPAs. And the main reason we don't do them is because there's not a lot of room in there, right? For subtlety, there's not a lot of room for these kind of subtle mixes or flavors. We do grow about 1,000 hop plants, and so we use those. And I think that's something fun that we can do. But that's really just a small piece. I mean, I think hops get a lot of the credit, a lot of the face time for local beer and farm breweries, but they're really, especially in Virginia, I think a really small piece of what's available and what's best about Virginia ag, frankly.
And to that point, like I'm looking over the beer list, and like one of the things that pops out to me is a cantaloupe wit. And I'm like, what? A cantaloupe wit? But if you think about it, a wit lends itself perfectly having a little cantaloupe in there. And whilst I haven't tried it, I love cantaloupe. That's why it kind of popped to me. I love cantaloupe, and I would never think about a cantaloupe wit. But then you think about a cantaloupe wit, and you're like, yeah, they do go together. Now I want to try it.
Good. That's exactly the idea, and I think that's that's the hardest part, and that's where I'm half the deal here. My wife and I co-run this place with other great people that are on our team, and she really manages the farm and really has a great kind of idea for what mixes. She's a great cook. She's not a trained chef or anything, but she really has a great idea of this is what's in my pantry, and she can throw it together and make something good about it. And we do a similar kind of exercise every week. So we try to brew something new each week. We retread a little bit, and then like we were just talking about, sometimes it's February and there's ice on everything, and we're gonna have to use something we have stored away, whether it's frozen fruit or dried herbs that we grew. So yeah, I mean, I think that mixing it is the fun part. It's hard, it can be challenging, but once you get it, it seems to work.
Yeah, and it's weird that you said that you guys you can't get very adventurous because you have the ingredients, and so you've kind of got to work within those ingredients. Whereas as we're having this conversation, my thought is you can't be anything but adventurous because you and your wife kind of have to sit down and go, okay, these are the ingredients that we have for the next batch that we're going to brew. What can we make from it? And as you mentioned, we're going to have a stout later on. You couldn't put cantaloupe in a stout; that'd be a ridiculous concept. So you have to think to yourself, I guess what I'm trying to say is you can't be that adventurous, but you do have to have a thought out process of what do we have, and then marry that with what can we brew, and you kind of got to get to the same level of we have this. this would go well with it. We're going to brew this. And now but then we also have to nail it as well.
Well, I think one of the hardest parts too is even after we get comfortable with that match, there's not really a handbook for, how much cantaloupe or how many elderflowers, or it's like, and you got to be, I know how well versed in beer and breweries you are. Like, there's some weird stuff out there, and there's some extreme stuff, right? Like, we've all opened up beers and taken a sip and gone, "That's very interesting," and it is interesting. But what I'm not trying to do that so much. I'm trying to make it really work so that it's part of like a broader range of flavors and not something that like punches you in the face, really. Which that stuff's fun, and I'm not. But that's just not what we're aiming for. And like you said, I mean, I think that's another hard part about it.
I think, and I've said this a number of times in my head retention podcast, and I don't think I've mentioned it during our February things, but I also feel like, look, anybody can put Fruit Loops in their IPA. You say interesting, and I think you're being very kind, and I appreciate you being kind to the rest of the world. But I also say there's a lot to be said of, and I keep coming back to this cantaloupe wit because I'm like, gosh, I really want to try this cantaloupe wit. But it's like, there's a difference between, oh, that was interesting, drain pour, to, wouldn't have thought of cantaloupe wit. This is good. And then continuing to drink it. And I'm not saying a drain pour is because the beer sucked, but there is a thing of, you know what, this is good. This is interesting. I can't finish a pint of this. So I'd assume, judging by your beer list and the thought and the care that you put into the beer list, you are foregoing interesting to go with drinkable with the ingredients and the matches that you can make.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, part of it, like all brewers, like we like to make stuff that we like to drink. So of course, that's a very common refrain, and it's true. And so, we start there, and then, yeah, like you said, you need to, I don't want anyone who comes here and wants to drink 2 beers to not be able to drink 2 beers of something that I have on my menu.
Right.
And so, that's a big part of it. I think it's, the other thing is there are a lot of breweries, right? So we're trying to ask ourselves, like, what are we adding kind of to the scene and the conversation? And I think for us, it's the farm. It's all the things we're growing. It's showing people how much, how interesting and tart, blackberry isn't just like a sweet sugary thing. There's like all these kind of cool tart, sour flavors in there. And so like, let's show that, let's get that into the, we do a blackberry saison that we do that with. And so, that's the fun part, I think, and part of like why we felt compelled to do what we do.
Is there a level, and I don't want to paint you in a corner with this question, but is there a level of an adventuresome palate to coming to Powers Farm? And I ask that question when I see 2 lagers on your beer list. One's an Appalachian corn. In reality, that's not an adventuresome type beer to have to think to yourself, I'm going to drink. But if you walk in and you see the word corn and you're not used to seeing the word corn associated with your lager, you do have to go, I'm all in, and really kind of be up for the fun of, hey, what does an Appalachian corn lager taste like? And know going in that this isn't Fruit Loops in my lager. This is something that will pair nicely and match nicely with the rest of the ingredients of a lager. So do you kind of need to have that kind of, hey, trust my brewer mentality walking into Powers Farm?
Yes, I think trust is the right word. That was the word I was going to throw out, and I think you're right. I mean, for the people that come and we serve, like a great local community, they know they aren't going to get the extreme version of what I'm trying to describe. So, I don't think you need to have an adventuresome palate to come to Powers Farm Brewery. I think it'll be something a little different. Not everybody loves cantaloupe. Not everybody loves licorice, the licorice tones and notes and yarrow. So, it's not, I'm not trying to make every beer for every person. I want it to be there, but no, I think the trust thing is exactly what you said. I think another thing I'm excited as we kind of tread back into the way we did things before 2020 is there was a lot of education that we got to do. There was a lot of, a very common thing that would happen here is kind of what you said. corn. I'm not corn in my lager. And then you give them a sip of it, right? They can take a sip, taste it. Oh yeah, that tastes like beer. That's interesting. And maybe they liked it, maybe they didn't like it, but you know, that was like a kind of education and a kind of like easing people into something that we used to do. And I used to really, frankly, enjoy it. And so, you know, there's a lot of that we're able to do here. It's a little harder to do now, but you know, we'll get back to it.
Yeah, and you know, you refined my question and your answer really well. I'm going to just go out and assume, because I've tried this Pilsner, that if you like a lager, you're gonna like the Appalachian Corn Lager. It's just gonna have a little something else that is, if your zone is here, and I'm holding my fingers X or my hands X amount apart, there's 1%, just go 1% further, and you're gonna get a little something else, but it's also good. It's gonna be the don't fear that it's not gonna taste like a lager. It's gonna taste like a lager with a little something fun in there.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there's also like there's a freshness that comes, you know, and I mean that like in a really specific way, but there's like a freshness that comes with brewing with kind of other ingredients. You know, and we don't filter, which I think I mentioned. And so you get like a little bit more of a fuller kind of impression from things. So yeah, I mean, I think the combination of what you said, it's a little bit different. And then it's just going to have, you know, we brew in such small batches that stuff just isn't around that long. And I think that's good. I think it's like allows people to get the essence of it without me having to worry about how it's going to sit in bottles on the shelf for 6 months or something like that.
I said this in an earlier Thursday, but it's true. And I keep coming back to Fruit Loops and the IPA because I read about that, and it feels like just a what are we doing here concept. But if you look at your beer list, and Kevin's already said they're not a huge IPA brewery. They have a couple of IPAs on tap, as every brewery should have an IPA or two on tap. But if you look at the rest of their brewery, their tap room list, these are not beers that you can play around with. And that's, to me, and I've said this before many times, the mark of a good brewery is, are we hanging our hat on the recipe, the time old recipe of making a lager, of making a Pilsner, of making a Belgian, or are we goofing around so much that it's not even the recipe that is the time honored recipe anymore? And your beer list is a beer list that you really can't mess around with. Like, there's a way to make a Pilsner. You've got to make it that way. And then when the lemongrass comes in, that's the additive, but it's still not, we're not rewriting the recipe on how to make a Pilsner or a lager or a brown ale. And that's the mark of a good brewer, that can stick to the recipe with just a little extra, little something something at the end to give me something that differentiates myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's well put. I mean, the styles, I don't think you have to be dogmatic about the styles necessarily, but like there's a reason why they brewed this beer this way for so long, and it's because it was good, you know, and it worked. All food and cuisine is like that. You know, I think one thing that we can do is focus a lot on the inputs. So like I just will quickly mention, you know, there's a outfit in Loudon called Jasper Yeast, and he does all his own yeast cultivation, and he can really help me find, you know, kind of smaller or lesser used yeast varieties that help me find that little extra something. And then we also get, you know, all of our specialty malt and more of our base malt from Murphy and Rude Malting in Charlottesville, which is, you know, he's malting 100% Virginia grown, and it's fresh, right? So it's not something that sat on a container ship or in a railroad car for a long time. So yeah, without having to like reinvent the wheel, we can just, like any type of cooking, you know, focus on the inputs.
The localness of not only the ingredients that you're growing, but then also the ingredients that you're bringing in from outside places is a hook that I'm sure you lean into, but I don't think it could be stated strongly enough about the freshness of the ingredients. And the only way you're going to get the ultimate in freshness is by getting your ingredients locally. And you know, Charlottesville's not far from you. You could have that in an hour and a half. You could make your order and get them right off onto the truck and into your brewing within a half of a day. It doesn't get any better than that.
No, it's true. I mean, especially with the darker stuff. I'm able to get it super fresh, and darker malts degrade quickly. And so we're able to do some really neat things. I mean, I literally can meet Jeff. We've pulled into parking lots in Culpeper, and he takes the grain out of his trunk and throws it in my car, and I drive it here. So, and there's, buying local is great, but I mean, actually, I'm doing it because of the quality of the product. I wouldn't do it if it was inferior. And so I think that, the local thing is an opportunity to do, besides supporting him, which is great, his product is really good. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really what we spend our time, geeking out over, is like, what's available to us. How can I find something cooler? I mean, the corn lager, we really liked how that turned out. And I know we're not trying that today, but that was Virginia grown corn. We grew it here. We're going to work with another farmer to plant the corn we grew. And I'm going to have this really, this process and this ingredient that we controlled and had input in. And, that's the kind of stuff that's fun, I think. We don't have to take it seriously. We're doing it because it's fun, not because it's, some type of high-minded thing. But, that I think lends itself to farm breweries.
So I poured the pumpkin stout while you were talking there, Kevin. And, well, there's a couple of things going on right now in Germantown, Maryland, which is where I'm virtually hanging with you today. Number one, my first thought when I received this earlier this week was, really? We're doing pumpkin stouts in February? I actually thought there was some sort of federal law that said pumpkin beers have to be on the shelf in August, which is ridiculous, and then they can only be consumed in the fall. So when I got a pumpkin stout from Powers Farm in February, you can imagine that I was a bit taken aback. But here's the thing. You can grow pumpkins and squash other points of the season of the year as well. So then I was like, okay, I'm here for a pumpkin stout in February. The second thing, and I'll let you answer the question in a second. The second thing, which is why I have to try it, the aroma from the bourbon barrel age is coming up off of my pint glass. As you were speaking, I'm like, I need to get this into my mouth because this smells fantastic. So I'm going to let you speak on my first statement whilst I consume, but I needed to get that second statement out because I can't wait any longer. So go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, we weren't sure whether to send you this one, but we thought it'd be a good conversation piece. So yeah, it's a pumpkin stout, which, we grow pumpkins, squash, and sweet potatoes here. We include them in the CSA as food, but then, we also take them home, roast them, caramelize them, and brew with them. What we don't do is any like pumpkin spice. This is a beer that really, we're able to take something kind of cool that we grow, take the starches and sugars from those ingredients that's turned into alcohol, and caramelize some of that stuff to get a flavor that I think melds really nicely with the, roasty kind of ambery malts that we get. That one features a lot of Virginia grown malt from Murphy and Rood. And stouts are one of these things where you can really layer some stuff in there. So yeah, there's no pumpkin pie spice in there or anything like that. We took this beer, we brewed it, we cured everything, roasted it, and then we've become friendly with the people at Copper Fox Distillery, which is out in Spurrierville. So I was able to get some super freshly dumped bourbon barrels, immediately start aging it, and it had a relatively short aging life. It was several months. It wasn't several years or anything like that, but yeah, it's kind of a mid-range ABV beer with hopefully a light hand on the bourbon, but enough to kind of really round that stuff together.
It's funny. This shows how YOLO I am. I didn't even look at the ABV as I started to drink. I just heard bourbon barrel aged and I was like, 10%, let's go. But this is only 6.2%, which is absolutely fantastic because you usually can't get a barrel aged beer at 6.2%. So this is refreshing, not in the refreshing of my palate sense, but refreshing in the, oh, okay, bourbon barrel aged under 8%. I'm here for it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I like taking a little lighter hand with the ABVs. I mean, part of that too, our brewing system makes it a lot harder to do that stuff without, getting into things, adding things to bump up ABV that I don't like to do. So, and also I like to drink this 5 to 7 ABV range. We do some Belgian beers that really dry out and can get up there in ABV, but yeah, that's just kind of, this is one of those, you're getting the beer the brewers like to drink situations, I think.
I'm not a I'm not a farmer, so I don't know the growing schedules or cycles. Is this a situation where pumpkin isn't available right now? So a nice little, I guess, compromise would be let's brew the beer when pumpkins are fresh, and then we can barrel age them, which then allows us to have a pumpkin beer at this time of year. Is that a correct timeline?
Exactly right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things we've learned is like, how do we, and sometimes the agricultural product isn't ready immediately when the kind of feel of a dark stout beer is best to drink. And same with the lighter stuff. And sometimes we brew it anyway. Sometimes we make the corn lager, after the corn comes in late fall and gets malted and all of that kind of stuff. And sometimes we figure out ways to wait. And barrel fermentation and barrel aging is an awesome way to do that. We do a really kind of higher ABV Belgian dark beer with sun-dried tomatoes. That beer is awesome in like, February, March. It's not as it doesn't hit the same way when everyone's sitting outside in July. So, that's a beer that
Correct.
we, and frankly, the way that yeast works is it really rounds itself out and dries itself out nicely over months and months anyway. So yeah, these are like just things that we kind of are learning on accident and trying to do more on purpose, I guess, as we stumble into them.
My last point on the beer is you talked about layers and how you can put some layers into a stout, and that's really what I'm getting here. Um, there is a there is an acceptable amount of heat from the bourbon barrels, but it's not overpowering, which I appreciate, especially as I am in the middle of my workday. Um, the pumpkin is there. For me, the thing that's really sticking out is the roastiness in the finish. It's I don't want to say stronger, but it's more present in the finish than I am used to, and really really like it because it's not one of those things that singes my taste buds, but it is roasty enough for me to go, there's some really good roasty flavor and aromas coming through after I finish it that I enjoy. So that's my 2-second review of your bourbon barrel aged pumpkin stout.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, I think stouts, there's a lot of different types of stouts too, and this is kind of a drier, roastier one. So, and this goes back to kind of the education stuff that we talked about earlier. You got to help let people know what lane they're going to be in for on those things. There's a lot. You can make super sweet stouts. They're making, stouts that aren't even that dark and roasty right now at some places. So yeah, I think that makes it a fun style also.
I um I imagine Powers Farm the Hang is a little more quiet than what you would get at, say, a rowdier brewery or a bar, uh, but a more meaningful hang is kind of what I'm gathering from even the beer and of course from our conversation. And I love the fact, and I've discussed this multiple times, that for me the lifestyle of craft beer is just as interesting as the actual drinking of the beers. And so conversations like these, I really get a kick out of and really enjoy while we're drinking beer. And I feel like at Powers Farm, that's kind of what we get because you mentioned a number of times the education process is really important to you guys over there. And that would to me, that sounds like a really, really fun, interesting hang where we talk for an hour and a half, and I have samples of 3 beers and I have a pint of something else. But I walk out going, I was really fulfilled by my Saturday afternoon at Powers Farm.
Oh, cool. Those are very kind words. I appreciate that. And I think you're right. I mean, it's a little bit by accident, but we're not open that late. We're pretty family friendly. We're not um, we're we're not a real big event business, and mostly that's just because my wife and I don't enjoy putting on events. So, you know, we really just try to focus on the beer, as cliche as that sounds. I mean, I think we do our best to serve the community that's here, kind of make it a place. You know, we're not in a, there's a specific part of Fauquier County that we're in, and there's not an enormous number of businesses or you know, places that people can be social. You know, specifically here, there's things in town, and so yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what we do here is just trying to be like that community spot and offer something that's interesting for people.
Yeah, to me, it's refreshing. And again, talking about the beer, but also talking about the mentality and the mindset. It just feels like it's, hey, we have a farm and we have a brewery, and that's what we do. And we're not trying to be A, B, and Bev. We're not trying to even be a huge regional brewery. We're just trying to serve you good beer, good hang, and we want to pay our bills. And that's the refreshing part is, you know, that buying into the CSA or buying a couple of pints, it's refreshing is what it is.
Well, yeah, that was you know, like I said, it was an accident, but that you pretty well nailed the business model for us.
Nice. I can't wait to get out there and actually hang and experience it myself and have some really interesting conversations about beer and beer ingredients with you and your wife. So Kevin, give us the details on Powers Farm, if there's a website, the socials, how we can just keep up to date on what's going on at your farm and brewery.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. So this is actually the time of year when we're taking CSA signups. So if you're listening to this and you live in the kind of Warrenton, Manassas, Gainesville area, you know, check us out, powersfarmbrewery.com. There's information there. You can call or email us if you're interested in that part of it. As far as the brewery goes, we're open Thursday through Sunday, you know, pretty typical hours. We have some local food trucks that do a great job of sourcing locally. One of the food trucks is a farm, actually. So, you know, we almost always have food options in that way. And then, yeah, if you're interested in the beers we have, we keep that list on tap and it's constantly rotating. So, you know, the more you come back, the more you'll see.
Can't wait to get out there for a Saturday or Sunday hang with a couple of good friends and just a discussion of beer and life. So Kevin, thank you very much for virtually hanging with us on this Thursday. We got to thank our friends at Visit Fauquier for backing FeBREWary and helping us put it on even virtually. And summer, fingers crossed, a trip to Powers Farm and Brewery. I would love it to be in my future. So thank you, Kevin. Cheers.
Yeah, I'd enjoy that. Thank you. Appreciate it.